Welcome to Night Chemistry, your candlelit refuge beneath the stars. Here we mix gentle science with soothing storytelling to guide you into restful sleep. Tonight's journey is a detective mystery tale entitled The Case of the Black Phosphene. Find a comfortable position, soften your breath, and let your thoughts dissolve like mist in moonlight. Prologue, Broken Clock. Berlin's Museum for Naderkunde seldom slept, yet on this late autumn night, its great hall lay hushed beneath a quilt of sodium lamp gloom. Marble dinosaurs kept silent vigil, their ribbed shadows stretching across parquet like the bars of a vast, invisible cage. The only movement came from the clock in the South Tower, an 1896 bronze giant whose hands now halted inexplicably at 2100 hours. 3 stories below, a laser grid traced scarlet lines around a glass display case labeled Black Phosphene, Experimental Allotrope 2025. Inside, under a nitrogen blanket, rested a crystal no larger than a wren's egg. Midnight dark, faceted, and faintly warm to the infrared cameras perched in the corners. At 21:01, the grid winked off. A figure stepped from the shadows wearing reflective polymer armor that bent the remaining light like a mirage. No alarms cried out. The feed to the security station showed an empty corridor. The thief cracked the nitrogen seal, lifted the crystal with carbon-tipped forceps, and slipped it into a vial filled with argon gas. For a moment the surface of the stone shimmered, an infrared glow invisible to human eye, but recorded by a sensor that would later confuse analysts with a spectrum none could identify. In the foyer, 2 guards chatted over instant coffee, arguing Bundesliga scores. A gust of cold air startled them. They turned just in time to see the lobby doors whisper shut. One guard frowned at the static clock face, still frozen at 9. Odd, he muttered, tapping his watch. The time was 21:07. 2 hours later, a night train from Vienna squealed into Hauptbahnhof. Detective-chemist Arthur Langley stepped onto the platform, trench coat heavy with Danube mist, his fedora tucked beneath an elbow. Dr. Lili Kozar followed, rolling a case marked portable NMR, fragile. Langley unfolded the cream-colored letter that had summoned them. Meet beneath the broken clock. No signature. Just a wax seal bearing entwined serpents, and the Greek word Phi Omega Sigma, light. Kozar scanned the station's analog boards. Museum South Tower clock stopped tonight, she said. News feed already speculates sabotage. Langley nodded, eyes narrowing. Phosphorus once lit the first safety matches. If someone has forged a darker allotrope, they may plan to strike a bigger flame. A museum courier intercepted them. Out of breath. You're Mr. Langley? The curators beg your help. He handed over a tablet showing thermal footage, the glass case flaring white-hot, then darkness as the feed cut. In the final frame, the crystal pulsed like a heart. Langley pocketed the letter. Take us to the scene. And bring a portable boric acid fogger. If black phosphine meets oxygen, Berlin's skyline becomes a bonfire. They exited into the night. Overhead, the tower clock loomed against a clouded moon, both hands nailed to 2100 hours, as though time itself refused to move forward until the city's newest element revealed whether it was miracle or murder weapon. Chapter 1. The Phosphorus Spectrum. The Museum for Naderkunde's South Wing corridor smelled faintly of ozone and fire suppression foam. Overnight custodians huddled at a distance, whispering as 2 uniformed officers lifted the police tape for Arthur Langley and Dr. Lili Kozar. A single display case dominated the chamber. Shattered glass sprinkled the parquet like frozen rain, and a jagged hole in the nitrogen enclosure still exhaled curls of pale mist. Langley knelt, checking the data, logger fixed to the plinth. The last entry, 20 hours, 59 minutes, and 47 seconds, showed an abrupt spike in chamber temperature from minus 40 degrees Celsius to 4 degrees Celsius, followed by loss of signal. He pried a splinter of glass loose with tweezers. The shard surface bore a soot-gray dust that glittered crimson when his pen light raked across it. Kozar held out a sterile vial. He sealed the fragment inside. Infrared triboluminescence, he murmured. Rupture of P P-bonds release heat the cameras couldn't see. Kozar fired up her portable NMR, an oblong metal box the size of a lunch pail. She pipetted 2 microliters of solvent onto a cotton swab, wiped the plint's interior, and loaded the sample cartridge. The spectrometer hummed, its tiny superconducting coil cooling with a hiss. Museum conservator Ralph Dietrich paced nearby, wringing his hands. We followed every protocol: argon purge, vibration sensors, 24-hour thermal sweep. Yet they walked in as if the alarms were theater stage lights. Langley glanced at the splinter count on the floor, the angle of missing shards. Not walked, Mr. Dietrich. Floated. Reflective polymer softened the laser grid. Microwave suction cups removed the glass in silence. He pointed at 4 evenly spaced circles etched in dust around the case. See the vacuum cup marks? Whoever planned this rehearsed the gesture until it became a chemist's metronome. The NMR chimed. Kozar projected the spectrum onto a holopad. Classic Phosphorus resonances should have lined up in a tidy quartet around 17 ppm. Instead, a broad, asymmetric peak sprawled across 35 ppm. Its shoulders fractured into smaller waves. Disordered lattice, she whispered. Bond angles between black and violet allotropes. This fragment started as black phosphorus but morphed, under stress, into something between 2 dimensions. Langley overlaid reference spectra of red, white, and black phosphorus. None matched the mutant mountain range on the display. A second overlay, monolayer phosphorine, aligning at the extreme left shoulder, told a harsher truth. Someone exfoliated the crystal on site, Langley said. Mechanically sheared a slice, so thin it's almost 2-dimensional. That's why the IR camera saw a pulse. It wasn't heat, it was photon emission from bond rupture. Dietrich swallowed. The exhibit label said metastable. Keep below minus 30 degrees Celsius. Does warmth. Turn it pyrophoric. Langley finished. If that nanosheet meets the air at room temperature, it oxidizes in milliseconds, releasing enough energy to light magnesium. A commotion erupted at the corridor entrance. White-suited fuelware technicians wheeled in a trolley stacked with dry ice blasters. Their sergeant approached Langley. Zone clear for sampling? Langley shook his head. Not yet. Every particle of black phosphine dust on this floor is a match head. We vacuum with inert gas only. No mechanical brushes, no thermal tools. Kozar exported the NMR data to her tablet, running a rapid Bayesian fit. Arthur, look at the minor peaks. Multiplet at 7 ppm. That's a trace of cyclopentadienyl ligand. Langley's eyes narrowed. Organometallic fingerprints. Whoever took the crystal handles metallocenes. Probably uses ferrocene greases in glove box bearings. He flicked open his field notebook. Suspect, Advanced Organometallic Lab. Berlin facilities license for ferrocene import. Check Zoll database. Cross-reference recent purchases of inert atmosphere drones or polymer mirror fabric. Dietrich cleared his throat. There is one lab. Under the old Zeppelinfeld bunker. We loaned them a Raman microprobe last winter. They claimed it was for silicon anodes, but they ordered organophosphate waste containers by the pallet. Langley snapped the notebook shut. Name: Greta Vogler, X-Max Planck Materials Division. Kozar's brows knitted. Published a paper 3 years ago on triboluminescent phosphorus, but journal retracted it after safety violations. Langley rose, trench coat swirling. Send me the loan agreement, every packing slip, and her last known purchase order. Also a floor plan of that bunker. Dietrich hesitated. Inspector Kovacs from Interpol is en route. He'll want formal chains of custody before you move. By then, Langley cut in, Vogler's test run will be a headline on Morgan Post. He turned to Kozar. We need boric acid foggers charged and ready. Phosphine oxidizes. Boron locks the oxygen. Then we bring cold IR cameras. Phosphine's glow is invisible to visible light. She powered down the NMR. And a Faraday cage for samples. Exfoliated sheets conduct like devil silk. Langley's eyes drifted to the frozen bronze hands high in the tower window. 2100 hours remained unwavering. In the glass reflections, he imagined the stolen crystal, now sliced in nanosheets, humming in some hidden centrifuge, counting down to a spark no one would see until it was too late. He faced Dietrich. Berlin's clock stopped tonight. Let's make sure it doesn't restart in flames. They strode toward the freight elevator, the distant echo of emergency sirens merging with the soft, restless creak of dinosaur bones overhead. Ancient witnesses wary of a brand new fire. Chapter 2, Invisible Sparks. The incident report came through at 4:19. A warehouse fire on the River Spree. Zero visible flame. Yet the interior temperatures soared past 1,800 degrees Celsius before the sprinkler mains burst. By 6 o'clock, Arthur Langley and Lili Kozar stood inside the char-black skeleton of Hall 12, Osthaven Logistics Park, respirators hissing in the ashy dawn. What struck Langley first was a silence. No crackle of residual embers, no smell of petroleum. The corrugated steel walls were warped like soft chocolate, but the wooden pallets stacked along them were only singed at the edges, as though the heat had radiated from midair, not from a point of contact. Kozar unpacked a handheld IR camera. She swept the lens across the debris. Faint afterimages of white-hot columns shimmered on the screen, dying phantoms of thermal energy. These streaks tracked vertically, she said, like something rose, flared, and vanished. Langley crouched beside a toppled forklift. Melted aluminium pooled under the chassis, but a cardboard shipping label still clung to its mast. Unburned. He peeled it off. Rapid convection without flame front, he murmured. That's consistent with sheer exfoliated phosphine oxidizing the air. The reaction dumps energy as heat and IR photons, but no visible combustion products. Pure phosphorus pentoxide aerosol. A few-aware investigator strode over, visors streaked with soot. We found this in the ceiling joists. He offered a blackened rotor blade, no larger than a dinner plate. Drone prop, battery shorted itself during the event. Langley examined the hub. Carbon fiber sprayed with silvery residue. He scraped a fleck into a vial. The particle glittered crimson under his pen beam before dulling to gray ash. Triboluminescence again, he said. The drone probably carried nanosheets of black phosphine, spun them off as dust while flying. Oxidation supplied the ignition energy that fried its own circuits. Kozar opened her tablet to compare flight restriction maps. No registered quadcopters were logged after midnight. Whoever piloted this used manual radio, no Wi-Fi handshake. Langley scanned the warehouse layout. Pallets bore barcodes from ChemLogic's GmbH, a freight forwarder Vogler used for dry ice shipments. She tested dispersion patterns, he said. A closed building, high ceilings, still air. Perfect lab for invisible sparks. Next run will be outdoors. He pulled up Berlin's city calendar. Festival of Lights dress rehearsal tonight. Brandenburg Gate will be surrounded by tens of thousands. Kozar swallowed. A single drone clouding phosphine nanosheets over that crowd. Flash heat, no flame, no warning. She turned the IR camera toward the river-facing loading dock. Cool breeze drifted through jagged doorways, scattering ghostly embers on the screen. Wind vectors would drive the plume straight into Parisoplatz. Langley radioed Inspector Kovacs. Confirmed pyrophoric field test at Osthaven. Linked the warehouse lease to Greta Vogler and ground all unregistered drones within a 2-kilometer radius of Brandenburg Gate. He pocketed the melted rotor blade and sent a hazmat boat. The river may carry phosphorus residues downstream. He clicked off and faced Kozar. We need to know how she's exfoliating the crystal mid-flight. Ultrasonic blades? Electrostatic mills. Kozar tapped a smudge of gray dust onto a glass slide and spritzed it with dilute boric acid. The grains hissed, forming a chalky crust. Whatever her method, boron still neutralizes it. If we load enough foggers on police drones, we can smother her cloud before it turns the plaza into a kiln. Langley nodded, already drafting equations in his notebook. Particle size versus oxidation rate, boric acid droplet density, IR beacon modulation. Above the gutted roof, dawn light painted the cloud salmon pink. Beautiful, deceptive, the color of phosphorus pentoxide in certain spectra. Tonight, he said, Berlin celebrates light. We'll make sure it doesn't burn. Chapter 3, the Euler Cipher. Berlin's criminal operations center buzz like an overclocked server room. Plasma screens rolled through flight band orders, thermal drone feeds, and a growing network graph of Greta Vogler's aliases. Yet Arthur Langley ignored the commotion. Hunched over a single printout, an hour of garbled access logs from the museum security server. 72 entries in 1 minute. Dr. Lili Kozar said, sliding him fresh espresso. All time-stamped 2058. 3 minutes before the grid failed. They looked like random sensor pings. Langley shook his head. Not random, rhythmic. He traced a column of 8-digit node IDs with a stylus, drawing connecting lines between successive entries. A jagged lattice emerged, loops that never cross themselves. Eulerian paths, Kozar realized, a route that travels each edge exactly once. Langley nodded. Vogler rewrote the access log as a graph cipher. The order of sensor hits maps to vertices on a floor plan. The only Eulerian circuit should spell her destination. He overlaid the lines onto the museum's blueprint. The circuit began at the Phosphene display, wound through ventilation shafts, and ended beneath the archives wing, in a stairwell sealed since the 1945 bombings. Kozar zoomed the plan. That stairwell connects to the old Zeppelinfeld air raid bunker under Tiergarten. She's literally walking history's fire corridors. Langley flipped to a second log, static from the museum's NMR spectrograph. Amid the noise stood for sharp peaks at 31 ppm Phosphorus, but inside the baseline danced tiny wiggles, dots and dashes. He decoded them by hand. 52 degrees 30 minutes 46 seconds north, 13 degrees 20 minutes 23 seconds east. The bunker's north hatch, closed to the public, now fenced off for bat conservation. He keyed his earpiece. Inspector Kovacs, Langley. We have precise coordinates. I want Tiergarten locked down, no tourist foot traffic, no drone hobbyists. Radius 500 meters. Understood, Kovacs replied, voice crackling. But the festival starts at dusk, politically volatile to seal the park. Volatility, Langley said, is exactly what we're preventing. Into the catacombs. Dusk had not yet fallen when they reached the hatch, a rusted steel door half buried in ivy. Kozar's Geiger-style IR wand showed a faint ghost glow leaking from the gaps. Phosphene dust excited by micro-friction of the hinge. They descended a spiral stair, air cooling with each step. 50 meters down the passage opened onto a vaulted tunnel line with concrete ribs and WW2 power conduits. A generator thrummed ahead, its exhaust routed through carbon filters. Purple strobes danced across the walls. Ultraviolet lamps. Tribal luminescence control, Kozar whispered. She can see the dust ignite as she cuts it. Langley motioned silence, advancing behind rows of nitrogen cylinders. They found a laboratory carved directly into bunker wall. Ultrasonic rotor blades hovered above a disk of matte black crystal, the black phosphine, while argon vents hissed to keep the air below the ignition threshold. Overhead, a rig of quadcopters waited, hoppers open like the jaws of iron dragonflies. Greta Vogler stood at control console, wearing mirror goggles and static shield lab coat. "You're early, Langley," she said without turning. "I thought you'd wait for the fireworks." Langley stepped forward, hands raised. "If you release that dust over Brandenburg Gate, the only fireworks will be coffin flames." Vogler smiled at the crystal. "Fire is purification. Berlin rebuilt itself from ashes once. It can do so again, cleaner this time." Kozar edged to the side, sliding a remote trigger from her pocket. Tiny boric acid foggers attached to police drones were already circling the park above. One press would flood the bunker's ventilation shafts. Vogler tapped a keypad. The ultrasonic blade descended toward the crystal. Langley's eyes locked on the amplitude setting. Anything above 30 kilohertz would shear nanosheets instantaneously. You studied triboluminescent phosphorus, Langley said, stalling. You know what happens when boron oxide meets the aerosol. An ugly white crust, Vogler sneered. But only if you coat every particle before oxidation. Can your drones beat the speed of flame? Kozar pressed a remote. Overhead, vents howled. A cold mist swept the lab, glittering as Borg droplets met stray ultraviolet beams. Vogler cursed, slamming the amplitude dial to maximum. The blade screamed. The crystal surface flaked into pitch-black snow. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then each flake hit the mist, hissing into inert BPO4 dust before it could spark. Langley lunged, cutting power at the main switch. The bunker lights died. In the gloom, only the faintest red glow pulsed in the crystal's wounded core. Heat, but no flame. Police floodlights burst through the stairwell as tactical units stormed in. Vogler backed against the console, goggles reflecting blue strobe. Science is conquest, she hissed. You can't legislate discovery. Langley cuffed her hands, careful to avoid the dust. Discovery without conscience is just arson with a lab coat. Debrief. Outside, Tiergarten's plane trees whispered under evening breeze, Borg fog dissipating like breath in winter. Festival technicians powered their projectors, unaware how close the city came to igniting without a spark. Langley watched the arrested drones sealed in Faraday crates. Kozar sealed the phosphine core in a triple-line Dewar flask cooled to liquid nitrogen. It's stable, she said, voice trembling with exhaustion. Barely. Langley glanced at Brandenburg Gate, now glowing gold against the twilight. Invisible sparks are the hardest to see, he said, but the easiest to feel after they burn. A fresh message pinged on his phone, an encrypted attachment containing a non-Euclidean diffraction pattern and a single word, skyrmion. He allowed himself one tired smile. The spectrum, it seemed, had no end. Chapter 4, Red Shift. Berlin's festival lights opened precisely at 2000 hours. The Brandenburg Gate ablaze with mapping projectors, tourist drones, and a low thrum beat of outdoor speakers. Arthur Langley slipped through the perimeter cordon with Inspector Kovacs, scanning the sky. Above the music, he could just hear police quadcopters circling, their boric acid foggers on standby. Inside an armored van parked on Pariserplatz, Dr. Lili Kozar watched Greta Vogler through a one-way panel. Handcuffed and mute, the chemist gazed at the gate's golden columns as though studying a crucible. Every so often she smiled, too calm for someone whose plan had been smashed only hours earlier. She's expecting a second act, Kozar muttered into her headset. She hinted at conquest through discovery, Langley replied. Conquest use armies. Who's hers? A comms officer interrupted. Infrathermal anomaly just lit up on the Fernsehturm feed. Narrow column, 200 meters east of you. Langley's tablet showed the tower camera's IR overlay, a pencil-thin spike of heat-blooming scarlet, where the eastern facade of the gate should have been cool limestone. Kozar's voice sharpened. That's not black phosphine dust. Too focused. Laser. Langley zoomed. A rooftop projector. Part of the light show had pivoted off script, beaming a 650 nanometers line directly at the gate's sandstone reliefs. Those surfaces sparkled with microscopic dust. Ordinary city grime enriched, Langley realized, with the rind of Vogler's crystal, nanoflakes too thin to ignite earlier, now being stimulated by coherent light. Black turns red under long-wave laser. Kozar said, connecting the dots. Red phosphorine has lower activation energy. Self-heats on contact with air, then flashes to P2O5. She's triggering a phase shift. And the gate's facade was about to become a furnace. The mirror conduit. Langley sprinted across the square, trench coat whipping in strobe flashes. Above him, a humming swarm of tourist quadcopters hovered, their LEDs painting hearts in midair. If even one drifted through the nascent plume, its nylon props would liquefy and rain molten plastic onto the crowd. He fired an IR beacon flare, 3 pulses at 9 m wavelength. Police drones recognized the code, banking to form a countering around the gate and spraying a curtain of boric fog. But the laser kept carving its invisible seam of heat. Inside the van, Kozar overlaid the projector's coordinates onto Vogler's seized flight logs. The rooftop host belonged to Ralph Dietrich, the museum conservator who'd sworn cooperation. He'd requested access to install an interactive phosphorescence exhibit for the festival. Conquest needs armies, Langley repeated. Dietrich was hers. Red phosphorine ignites. Up on Dietrich's rooftop, Langley found a compact fiber laser gimbal bolted to the parapet, its beamline fed from a bank of lithium packs. The sandstone beneath began to smoke, not with flame, but with swirling white vapor, phosphorus pentoxide forming midair. His portable thermometer screamed 250 degrees Celsius at 6 meters. Langley yanked the power cable. The beam died, but residual heat raced across the gate's carved quadriga. He swung his boric acid sprayer, blanketing the crest in milky mist. The vapor hissed, crystallizing into harmless boron phosphate that glittered under the festival strobes like fresh frost. Down on the square, spectators gasped, first in wonder, then confusion as a sudden snow drifted off the monument. Event DJs assumed it was theatrical and amped the music. Nobody panicked. Langley cuffed Dietrich beside the gimbal. The curator trembled, startled less by arrest than by failure. "You don't grasp it," he stammered. "Black phosphine can power cities once we tame its flames." "Cities need light, not incendiary myths," Langley said, tightening the zip tie. "You tried to write history with invisible ink and set it alight. Violet justice." At 21:07, the moment Berlin's museum clock had frozen the night before, Langley signaled Kozar. She activated a portable UV flood aimed at Dietrich's hands. The phthalocyanine tracker Vogler had dusted on the crystal yesterday still clung to his fingerprints. Under ultraviolet, it flared indigo, tying him irrevocably to the theft. Back in the armored van, Vogler watched live feeds as her last ally was led away. For the first time, her composure cracked. Lips tightened, knuckles whitened. Langley entered, removing his respirator. "The gate still stands. Doctor, your flame purified nothing." Vogler leaned forward, eyes catching the flicker of police beacons. "Fire separates the essential from the trivial," she whispered. "When you extinguish the blaze, you also halt evolution." Langley shook his head. "True evolution learned control. The rest is arson." He sealed the van, signaling transport to central holding. Festival lights continued their kaleidoscope across Berlin's facades, now scrub of invisible sparks, safe under a pale dusting of boron frost. Kozar joined him at the parapet, watching the crowd cheer an oblivious countdown to the next color cycle. "Red shift avoided," she said, voice soft with relief. Langley looked at his watch. 21:10, finally past the cursed hour. "Shifted," he corrected, towards something safer on the spectrum. Yet in the back of his mind, the encrypted word skyrmion spun, like a freshly shattered crystal lattice, hinting the spectrum's darkest shade was still to come. Chapter 5, 72-hour flashpoint. Berlin citywide countdown clocks read 71 hours 46 minutes since the museum theft when Arthur Langley heard the first turbine whine. He stood on the roof of Hotel Adlon, Brandenburg Gate still glittering below, and watched a dark triangle-break cloud cover above the spree. It was no tourist quadcopter. The silhouette was a Delta-wing cargo drone, silent prop fans, composite skin, a platform rated to carry 50 kilograms at jet ski speed. Dr. Lili Kozar's voice crackled in his ear. Thermal optics show 3 identical craft inbound from different headings. Vector converges on the gate at 2300 hours, exactly 72 hours after Vogler stole the crystal. Langley pulled the memory card he'd lifted from Dietrich's rooftop projector. A single encrypted flight plan sat inside, M_Omega. Kozar, brilliant with pattern, had solved on a ride over, Morse rendered as Eulerian vertices, spelling Moloch. Vogler's coup de grace was biblical. Fee Berlin to a spark god. Autonomous arson. Inspector Kovacs patched in from the command post. Intercept helicopters can't close. Drones are autonomous. No RF link to jam. Because the guidance is optical, Langley replied, scanning the skyline. High atop the gate, festival lasers still painted shifting tapestries across the quadriga. The drones would track that moving beacon until release altitude, dump their payload of sheer exfoliated phosphine dust, then self-immolate. Boric acid foggers could smother a plume, but not a free-falling sack of nanosheets igniting 30 m above a crowd. Kozar's solution arrived in 3 words. Blind the beacon, making night of day. 2054. Power crews received emergency clearance. At 2055, every architectural spotlight around Pariserplatz winked out. Berlin's golden heart fell into blackout. Festival goers gasping as phones became the sole light. Yet the gate's roof line still shimmered, lasers driven by a battery rack inside the monument's attic. Langley sprinted through candle-lit colonnades, ascended iron service stairs 2 at a time, and burst into the attic. Holographic projectors whirred like hornets. Dietrich had left them on a loop. Langley ripped the master fuse. Darkness swallowed the attic, but his IR goggles showed afterimages of vermilion dust clinging to timber beams, residue from yesterday's redshift test. 2058. 2 drone icons vanished from police LiDAR, now too low for radar. Their thermal ghosts streaked toward the gate. Langley keyed his mic. Override sequence. Deploy IR lures pattern delta. On adjacent rooftops, police text pop thermal flares. 3-second bursts at 850 nanometers, stronger than any residual heat on the gate. The drone's machine vision systems jerked midair, target priority scrambling. 2 banked hard, homing on the decoys. The 3rd stayed true. Rooftop chase. 2359 on Vogler's sabotaged museum clock. 2059 in real time. The Delta Wing plunged toward the gate, cargo bay door irising open. Langley saw the glint, black phosphine packed in mylar envelopes, each smaller than a paperback yet potent as a magnesium bomb. He vaulted across the attic joist, drew a carbon mesh capture net from his satchel. 3 square meters of Faraday cage gauze soaked in glycerol borate. 1 mis-throw and the net itself could become kindling. Wind buffeted the parapet. The drone roared overhead at 40 meters per second. Langley pitched the net like an angler casting downstream. Electrostatic fibers snagged the drone's starboard wing. The craft yawed, auto-corrected, and in stabilizing released its load, straight into the gauze. Impact energy tore 3 envelopes, dust billowing violet in UV strobes as triboluminescence briefly flared. Glycerol borate hissed on contact, converting POR to inert BPO4 glass within seconds. The rest of the payload stayed trapped. The crippled drone spiraled into the Tiergarten lake, boiling a brief plume before sinking. Flashpoint averted. Below, festival goers cheered, assuming, again, part of the show. Over comms, Kozar confirmed the other 2 drones had nosedived into pre-scouted boric acid pools police barges had flooded onto the spree. No civilian injuries. Temperature spikes contained. Inspector Kovacs arrived breathless atop the monument. We show 0 uncontrolled oxidation. Is it over? Langley unhooked the sagging net from the parapet. Inside, black dust had vitrified, locked forever in a glassy matrix. Over, he said, provided we keep the city dark for 1 more hour. Phosphene hates the dark. It has nothing to feed on. Kovacs managed a weary grin. Berlin can handle an hour of night. Coda 007. Power returned street by street, cheers rippling outward like concentric waves of relief. Langley and Kozar stood beside a police evidence truck as technicians sealed the vitrified phosphine in amber-colored resin blocks. Each brick weighed maybe a kilo, harmless now, but a reminder that some element of the periodic table still dream of fire. Kozar handed Langley her tablet. In Next Manifest, Vogler smuggled 1.6 kilograms of raw crystal before we stopped her. We recovered 1.58. 2 grams are unaccounted for. Langley stared at the deficit, enough in nanosheet form to cut a building in half. Where? Before she could answer, his phone vibrated. Unknown sender. A single line of text over a GIF of swirling magnetic vortices. Skyrmions move in zero field. No signature. Just coordinates. 64 degrees 8 minutes north, 21 degrees 55 minutes west. Somewhere in the North Atlantic. Langley pocketed the phone and turned to Kozar. We'll find the missing 2 grams. But first, he exhaled, get some sleep? Chemistry's next riddle is spinning in Iceland. Above the Brandenburg Gate glowed again, its sandstone unmarred, saved by boron frost and a city willing to switch off the lights. And in the melted wreckage of a drone at the bottom of the spree, inert glass glittered like stilled embers, proof that not every spark must become a flame. Chapter 6, The Missing 2 Grams. The official press briefing ended at 1:30. Cameras packed away. Brandenburg Gate stood serene beneath the returning floodlights. Tourists none the wiser that Berlin had brushed against chemical oblivion. But Arthur Langley's mind stayed on the deficit, scrolling across Dr. Lili Kozar's tablet. Minus 2.00 G black phosphine, nanosheet grade, less than or equal to 40 nanometers. 2 grams, he murmured, pacing beside the evidence truck. Enough surface area to sweep a metro tunnel clean of oxygen. Inspector Kovacs joined them, exhausted. We've searched Dietrich's apartment and Vogler's storage. Nothing. Kozar pinch-zoomed a shipping manifest recovered from Dietrich's cloud drive. One line glowed red. Consigner. Viogeniscormel. Item. BNPNFXF Research Standard. Weight. 0.002 kilograms. Dest. Berlin Tegel Hangar 4, 045. Courier. Aurora Air Cargo, Icelandic. 045 was 15 minutes ago. Langley's eyes snapped to the western sky, where blinking navigation strobes climbed into low cloud. Aurora runs night hops to Keflavik, he said. Cold storage, inert gas holds, ideal to keep phosphine dormant until delivery. Kovacs cursed softly. We can't scramble Luftwaffe on a hunch. Then we intercept on the ground, Langley replied. Keflavik's cargo apron is Schengen internal. Customs can only if Icelandic police requests. He glanced at Kozar. Get Reykjavik's has chem unit on encrypted line. Keywords, phosphine, pyrophoric, nanosheet. Magnetic breadcrumbs. Kozar tapped the tablet. We still need proof the missing dust is aboard. Wait, see this. She overlaid Aurora's cargo tracker with Vogler's drone telemetry. Each GPS point flickered alongside a micro-Gauss reading. Background EM noise measured by the drone's compass chips. Why log geomagnetism? Kovacs asked. Langley's gaze hardened. Because Vogel scattered phosphine on the gate and doped it with iron nanodots, skyrmions, a magnetic signature. Her drones could lock onto even through Borg fog. He pointed to the tablet. That export crate will be screaming magnetic vortices. If Icelandic customs aim a fluxgate probe, the box glows like a lighthouse. Kozar fired off an encrypted file. SKYR and ISO. Instructions to build a handheld skyrmion scanner from a Hall effect ring and standard oscilloscope. Icelandic responders confirmed. 20 minutes to assemble. Spree water, violet clue. The evidence team winched the sunken drone from the Tiergarten lake. Langley scraped vitrified glass from the cargo bay walls. Amber shards gleamed violet under UV. Phthalocyanine tracker, he said. If the 2 missing grams left the drones earlier, Dietrich must have handled them bare-fingered. Kovacs raised an eyebrow. But we UV scanned him top to bottom. Langley nodded. Except his boots. Airport security will never question purple-stained soles. He phoned Tegel's ground police. Within minutes, they relayed CCTV stills. Dietrich boarding the Aurora freighter in maintenance coveralls, wheeling a nitrogen-cooled sample keg the size of a fire extinguisher. Last phone call, 1:57. Langley's phone vibrated, Unknown Icelandic number. He answered to white noise, then Vogler's calm voice from a detention cell. If you chase my phoenix to Iceland, remember, true fire is born in vacuum. Break the seal and Reykjavik's wet Atlantic wind will finish what Berlin's dry air couldn't. Langley replied evenly, your phoenix lost its wings. We're clipping its tail feathers next. Vogler laughed once. Skirmions don't need wings. They swim through nothing. The line cut. Kozar met Langley's eyes. She sounds certain those 2 grams can still ignite. They can if shattered, he said. Cargo turbulence over the mid-Atlantic. Sudden keg rupture. Phosphene disperses through the hold. Aurora flight crew opens bay door Keflavik. Instant whiteout flash. He turned to Kovacs. Tell Iceland. Land the freighter on an outer taxiway. Keep hatches sealed. Tow straight into an argon-flooded hangar. Their Skirmion scanner will confirm the cargo. Our boric acid cannons will finish the job. Clock restarts. 2:45. Confirmation pinged. Icelandic police detected a 6 metric tons magnetic vortex inside Dietrich's keg. Hangar sealed. Argon flooding. At 3:02, Kozar received thermal data. Internal keg temperature steady at minus 20 degrees Celsius. No oxidation spike. 2 grams secured. Kovacs exhaled, shoulders finally easing. Berlin lives to see sunrise. Langley glanced up. The museum's tower clock, repaired at last, ticked beyond 3:05. 48 hours since the heist. 72 since Vogler's first test. Both windows closed. Yet the coordinate text still glowed on his phone. 64 degrees 8 minutes north. 21 degrees 55 minutes west. He slipped the device away. Windows closed, he said. Doors open. Kozar smiled wearily. North Atlantic door? Exactly. 2 grams of nightmare. Need a permanent tomb. FedEx to Iceland's lava tubes. Molten basalt makes perfect borosilicate. She raised an eyebrow. And the Skirmion riddle? Langley started down the steps toward a waiting car. We'll ask the basalt for answers on the flight. Behind them, Brandenburg Gate faded into pre-dawn gray, its sandstone still dusted with harmless boron glass. Silent testimony that sometimes the best fireworks are the ones the world never sees. Epilogue, Midnight's Luminance. The North Atlantic night wrapped Keflavik Airport in sleet and sodium orange haze when the cargo tug rolled Hangar 12's doors shut behind Arthur Langley and Dr. Lili Kozar. Inside, argon fog clung to the concrete like low cloud, muffling every footstep as technicians wheeled the nitrogen keg to a blast-rated transfer cradle. At minus 18 degrees Celsius, the inner capsule hissed when Langley cracked its seal. A puff of inert gas escaped, swirling around 2 grams of black phosphine dust, now fused into a single glassy bead. Boric acid had begun the vitrification, but Iceland volcanic rock would finish it. Kozar slid the bead into a crucible that glowed dull red atop an induction coil. Basalt melts at 1200 degrees, she said, voice echoing in the vast hangar. Phosphorus pentoxide can't survive that bath. Langley watched the crucible descend through a hatch into a portable smelter, its ceramic throat aimed directly at an abandoned lava tube outside Reykjavik. When the coil's field engaged, the bead liquefied, shimmered violet one last time, and fell into darkness. A sensor chirped green. Material rendered inert. Keflavik says Chem Chief offered the detective a clipboard. Langley signed, noting the time, 3:47. Exactly 72 hours since Vogler had frozen Berlin's museum clock. The cycle, at last, was closed. Outside the hangar, sleet had turned to ice pellets that rattled against a land cruiser, waiting to take them into the city. Kozar buckled in, rubbing fatigue from her eyes. No loose ends, she said, half statement, half plea. Langley opened his satchel, producing the narrow test tube he retrieved from Vogler's workstation, an opaque suspension flecked with silver threads. He held it to the dashboard's courtesy light. The threads writhed slowly against the glass. Skirmions, he murmured. Magnetic vortices trapped in gallium nitride nanowire. They move with no external field, just thermal noise. Kozar's shoulder sagged. So that's her next fire? Or someone else's? Langley slid the tube into a mu-metal cylinder, then into his coat. Vogler claims discovery is conquest, but conquest leaves tracks. Discovery leaves questions. The driver eased onto the runway perimeter road. Beyond the frosted windows stretched Iceland's lava plain, a frozen tide of black glass shimmering under distant aurora. Threads of green light dance above the horizon, silent and cold, yet alive with unseen currents. Langley tapped the window, tracing the auroral arcs. Electricity without flame, he mused. Nature's skirmions painted across the sky. Kozar managed a weary smile. Maybe the spectrum still has colors we can keep harmless, or secrets we haven't burned ourselves on yet. He closed his eyes, listening to the hum of studded tires on ice, already mapping the next equation. Far behind them, Hangar 12's smelter vented a plume of white steam into the night, then fell silent. In the dark throat of the lava tube, 2 grams of nightmare cooled into lifeless glass. Midnight made luminous only by curiosity and safely entombed by chemistry. Thank you for wandering through the quiet corridors of night chemistry. May the questions of the day dissolve like salt in still water, and may peaceful dreams form their own gentle equations. Until our next nocturnal experiment, sleep well and good night.